Hey everyone, welcome back to another PNSO review. Today we're taking a look at Chuanzi, the Tarbosaurus. I ended up getting this figure off of Amazon. It retails for just under $40, and I'll leave a link to that Amazon listing down below in the description. So getting back to Chunky Chauncey here, you know what? I really don't like that name. It doesn't seem like a Chauncey to me. I'm calling this big boy Wilfred for the rest of the review. So getting back to Tarbosaurus, I was so happy PNSO decided to finally do this species. A lot of companies don't really pay attention to Tarbosaurus. There's barely any figures from this species, probably because it's so similar looking to T-Rex. It's very closely related species. But PNSO has been great the last few months, giving us some species that have been lacking in our collection. So I was really happy when they finally revealed this chubby boy. So let's go over the packaging really quick. You get a nice picture of Wilfred along the front of the box. It is part of the Prehistoric Animal Models line. It's number 51 in the series. Top of the box, you have a nice close-up of the Tarbosaurus, and then inside the packaging, just like all the other figures, you get a little pamphlet with like a childlike story about Tarbosaurus. You do get a nice picture of the skeletal up here, and the skeletal pretty much matches what this figure looks like. But on the other side of the pamphlet is something new that they've been doing. You get a nice poster with some beautiful artwork of this Tarbosaurus. You can see this figure has some feathers on his head. There is no evidence that Tyrannosaur species this large had feathers, but it is nice art nonetheless. So enough about the packaging. Let's take a closer look at this Tarbosaurus. So let's start with a nice 360-degree view of this Tarbosaurus. I absolutely love this figure. It's just such a chunky and powerful looking figure. I know some people are kind of critiquing it for like the bulk on here, but I really appreciate it. Just love all the heft in the legs, the body, and the neck. It's just such a big, powerful looking animal. And I guess you can view this animal as like a individual in its ecosystem. It is the largest, meanest thing on the block. It eats what it wants, it steals what it wants, and obviously it's using its great size to an advantage. So if you want to like view it as the top predator in its ecosystem, then you might have a easier time digesting how bulky this figure looks. The color scheme is pretty drab. It's mostly just gray with a little bit of white and brown mixed in, but I think it works. You do have a little splash of yellow for the bony ridges on the top of the skull, but there's some really great brown wash over there. It looks like all dust is caked up between the scales, which adds a really nice touch, really brings out all that beautiful scale detail, and I just think it's a beautiful looking figure. I know some people are complaining about like it kind of has a pot belly. I think I heard some people on the Facebook group saying that the Australia, those are the belly ribs, are positioned wrong on this sculpt. It should be a little bit trimmer looking, but honestly, it doesn't bother me. It is the best looking Tarbosaurus on the market, in a market that's full of very few Tarbosaurus figures. Well, let's just do a couple quick measurements. This figure is just over 12 inches long from the tip of the tail to the tip of the snout, and just a hair over 4 inches tall to the top of the head. So Tarbosaurus in real life was between 33 and 39 feet long. So those measurements, I put this figure somewhere in the 133 to the 140 scale range. And just like every other bipedal figure PNSO has put out lately, you do get a nice little clear acrylic stand to help support your figure. You just need to position it right underneath this figure's really bulky chest, and that should prevent any leaning issues this figure would get in the future. And I always use my stands with these figures because I've had some serious leaning issues, even with the stands. Some of the stands are kind of finicky and you got to position them just right, but this one just easily fits underneath the chest and really holds this figure nice and secure. And let's zoom and take a look at some of the finer details on this figure style with this beautiful head sculpt. That is a nice looking Tarbosaurus head. You can see some of that yellow for the bony ridges above the eyes and along the top of the snout. It's actually kind of like almost a glossy yellow, and it looks quite nice. And even the top of the head is really well done. Tarbosaurus had a little bit more slimmer looking snout, not as bulky and bulging out to the side as Tyrannosaurus Rex. So they definitely nailed the head shape on this figure. And then turn it over, you can see the eyes are painted a yellow color with a black pupil. Lots of beautiful scales sculpted all over the head. Some nice scale variation. No lips on this figure, like I've said a couple times. PNSO does not believe these theropods had lips, so don't expect to see lips on these type of figures from them. The teeth are really well done. They actually have a nice like yellow wash over there to give it that built up plaque look. That is a really nice touch. Nice and sharp looking, no sloppy paint. You can see the nostril right here, and then the ear canal is right there before the seam of the head where it meets the neck. And this figure does have an articulated jaw. It closes nice and flush, and it opens up about that wide. You can see some really nice glossy gum tissue in there with some really nice details. So let's turn the figure over to the front and look at it. You can see some nice binocular vision. Tongue is nicely detailed. There's some nice wash over there, bring out all that detail. And then turn the figure over, looking inside the mouth. The top of the mouth is very well detailed. You know, my favorite thing every time I turn these figures over is seeing those nasal passages. That's always a great touch, because a nice scale variation along the bottom jaw, which is kind of done in a cream color. You have a little bit of that gray paint along the top of the lower jaw, and then going down to the neck is nice and chunky, and you can see that brown wash in there that mixes in, that kind of gives this figure like a dusty coating, like all dust settling in the cracks and scales on this figure. I think that is a really nice touch. And then going down to the shoulder area, you can see some large osteoderms sculpted in, and then going down to the incredibly puny forearms in this figure. Tarbosaurus had the smallest proportional arms of any Tyrannosaur species, and I think PNSO absolutely nailed that. They're so small, my camera does not want to focus in on them, and just look how stubby and tiny and pointless these look. They are quite hilarious looking, but they definitely nailed the look. Like, it's just pretty much just the elbow sticking out of the skin right here. I think that's so cool looking. The hand claws are nice and sharp looking, and they are painted with black paint. Going down to the body, you can see that cream color mixed it in with all that dark gray, and just like beautiful scale detail. I know one of the complaints on Wilson was that the scales were very oversized and it looked over textured, and they definitely did a much better job on their Tarbosaurus. He's a nice proportionate looking scales, nice and fine looking, great texture. Just running a figure with him, it feels great. The leg is very powerful and thick looking, and just look at that bulging calf muscle, just pure power on this animal. And then going down to the hind feet, you can see the feet are really well done. The toe claws are done in a very dark gray paint. Nice glossy coat on them. You get some nice scale detail on the toes. And then over here, you can see the dew claw is sculpted in. Same thing with the toe claws on here. And you get some nice caked up dirt between all the scales on the feet. And then turn the figure over, get a look at the belly. You can see that cream coat and nice folds of wrinkles and scale detail. And then turn the figure over from the top. You can see it's not a super wide barrel chest like T-Rex, so they definitely nailed the top part of this animal by not making it so wide and bulging. You know, look at this figure from the side, you expect when you turn it over that chest is going to look like a giant barrel, but they really nailed the slightly sleeker look of a Tarbosaurus. Going down to the hip region, hips are nicely sculpted, nice big thick tail base, some more folds and wrinkles on the tail, all the way down with all that really fine scale detail. So yeah, this is just definitely a beautiful, beautiful looking figure. I absolutely am digging this thing. I think it's one of my favorite figures PNSO has put out so far this year, probably until I get that Tarbosaurus. Moving on to comparisons, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of Tarbosaurus figures on the market, so here it is with the Kyoto Tarbosaurus, which is preying on a Saurolophus. Really hope sometime in the future PNSO does a Saurolophus figure, because that is one of my favorite hadrosaurs. And you can see how this tiny Kyoto figure stacks up against this beast of a PNSO Tarbo. And next up, my only other Tarbosaurus figure that I have here is the one from the Mattel Jurassic World line. Obviously a stylized movie monster version of Tarbosaurus, but a Tarbosaurus figure nonetheless. And I think it's great that Tarbosaurus makes an appearance in the Jurassic World line, which is a very popular dinosaur toy line, so at least it'll get more people aware of this species. And next up, here it is with the PNSO Sinoceratops. I think those two look really nice next to each other. And let's do another PNSO herbivore. Here it is with their awesome looking Ankylosaurus. And next up, here it is with PNSO's Allosaurus. I have to hold on to. This figure does not want to stand for some reason, so I'll just lean it up against the Tarbo's chest. You can see how much bigger this Tarbo is than Allosaurus. And here it is with PNSO's Parasaurolophus. And next up, here it is with PNSO's Stegosaurus. This is a $38 figure, and this is a $65 figure, just for those of you wondering. And next up, here it is with PNSO's Feather T-Rex. And lastly, here it is with some of the other Tyrannosaurus species that PNSO has put out. Their amazing Wilson Tyrannosaurus Rex, their Chinsusaurus, and the recently released Tyrannus. You can see all four of these look really great next to each other. Wilson's just a little bit bigger than the Tarbosaurus, as it should be, so they both scale really well with each other. I think it's just great that you have two very closely related species now that you can display on your shelf. You know, some paleontologists actually think Tarbosaurus should be renamed into another species of Tyrannosaurus because they are so closely related. So, final thoughts on this Tarbosaurus. I think it's a fantastic looking figure. Yeah, it might be a little bit bulky for some people, but personally, I am loving the bulk that PNSO is giving their Tyrannosaurs. We've had too many skinny dinosaurs for far too long, and PNSO has finally listened to collectors with well-researched models, and this Tarbosaurus is just truly beautiful. And I just love how Wilson and Wilfred just look next to each other. I think they're just truly, truly beautiful figures. Let me just line them up a little bit more, because I know a lot of people really want to see comparisons between these two figures. You can see Wilson's just a little bit bigger, you know, a little bit more hunch position. This one's a little bit more upright, so really two nice contrasting figures. And like I said at the beginning of the review, got this figure off of Amazon. Retails for just under $40. Link to Amazon is down below in the description. So that would do it for the review. I finally just got in the PNSO Carcharodontosaurus, so I shall have that review up a little later on in the week. Still have the Dino Hazard Irritator to work on, and a couple more other figures. So be on the lookout for those reviews in the near future. And as always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously. It's greatly appreciated, and I'll see you guys for the next one.